Time now for an important conversation. In a post-pandemic world where there's been so much talk about work-life balance, even as one talks about high unemployment rates, there are new buzz terms doing the rounds like quiet quitting to contend with. This week, the founder of Bombay Shaving Company was in the eye of a storm after the entrepreneur was quoted saying freshers should not do Rona Dhona and they should put in 18 hours a day for at least 4 to 5 years. And he received a lot of flack for his remarks. Many have been pointing out that this could lead to exploitation of workers, of employees. Well, joining us now to explain exactly what he meant is the man of the moment, Shantanu Deshpande. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your taking out the time. First and foremost, Shantanu, your post on 18-hour work days and not to do Rona Dhona created quite a controversy. Why did you mention it? In what context? And why do you say you will no longer post like this on LinkedIn?
I think I went, I was not expecting the kind of reaction I got. I typically have people agreeing and disagreeing with me, sometimes passionately, but it's restricted to a smaller group of people. This obviously went a lot wider than that.
And viral.
I think it did make me reflect on the choice of words, and people who don't know me, when they read what I say, obviously they just go off the words and not the tone, which never comes across in a post. But I think the negative reaction is the first time it's happened to me, to be honest. So I did not know how to deal with it. Some of the responses, emails, your initial instinct is to revert or at least have an intellectual debate, which is what I usually do. But I realized that was, it was becoming a decibel competition. So I kind of decided to.
But you stand by what you said still?
No, I think the intent is to work hard in your early days and kind of leave everything on the pitch, right? But yeah, I could have framed it better. There is no doubt about it. I don't want people to take away what they took away. That's the issue with miscommunication, right? What I'm wanting to say and what someone is listening, if that's different, that's the communicator's responsibility. So
well,
I would have framed it differently. No. But I stand with the core intent of what I was saying.
So what was the core intent of what you were trying to say?
When you are achieving excellence, and you should, you owe yourself excellence, the only variable you can control is hard work. You cannot control anything else. You cannot control how much money you are born with. You cannot control whether you are born with God-given talent or not, nothing, right? You only control effort. So you need to maximize that. Second is, when you are 21, 22, 23, you have the maximum energy, minimum responsibility. So if you are able to build muscle in those 5-7 years, whatever muscle it is you want to build, that carries you that momentum carries you for the rest of your career, and you can have a very fulfilling, fruitful career, right? And I think we are going to see the migration of India from, like, if you look at the life we live versus the life our parents lived at the same age, it's very different, right? So the migration of India up economic classes is very real and within intra-generation. So if you put in the effort early on, you reap the benefits. And you don't want to be 35, 40 years old, having, kind of partied through the last decade and then regretting not putting in the effort when you had the opportunity. So that's pretty much what I would advise myself if I were 22. It's the fundamental middle class tenet of India, right? Mehnat karo. Every parent tells their child, independent of whether they are a farmer, they are a business person, they are a government employee, whatever it is. Mehnat karo is a fundamental tenet of the way we live. So it's there's nothing different that I was saying.
But mehnat karo can't that be exploited too? Yeah,
of course. I mean, India has multiple working environments that are labor intensive, right? We have manufacturing setups, we have call centers, we have a lot of places where sometimes there is mediocre bosses, there is work culture that is exploitative, and if you are stuck there, that's a problem. So I do feel that this is not.
But in that context, then would you rethink what you said, given that you've just admitted that it can be misused?
No. I did not mean this. That's the issue. I said this as a piece of advice to any 22-year-old. I did not say this as an employer or an entrepreneur, right?
Okay.
The fundamental belief is that if you are in a place that is toxic, please get out of it, right? Good people don't deserve to spend a single moment in a toxic environment, whether it's political, whether it's with a bad boss. They're not learning, they're not inspired. The work is monotonous and not matching with your skill set, whatever it is. There could be millions of reasons. People are not respectful of your family or time. But if you are in such a place, if you feel that you are learning, if you feel that you have an opportunity to grow, then don't take it for granted and kind of put everything into it. If the basic conditions for growth and prosperity are met, then put in the effort. Don't lose that opportunity. And a lot of us have opportunities our parents didn't. Let's be honest about that, okay? So we should not take that for granted.
Of course, but what then is the work culture at Bombay Shaving Company, Shantanu? Because is it this 18 hours, brutal days, no work-life balance, like horrific place to work, and there are people who say, everyone's working like a slave?
All my bosses at McKinsey were deeply confused and said that you are one of the most chill people who reported into us. What prompted you to say this? And it was the same thing as Bombay Shaving Company. We're very outcome oriented. We are our core tenet, our core fund. It's written in big blocks on our reception is feet on the ground, eyes on the stars. Right? We are people who genuinely believe in doing your best and focusing on the outcomes. We don't care when people come in, when people go. There is no hierarchy. There is no sir, ma'am. Over the last 4 or 5 days, the people who have made the most memes of me are my own employees, who have kind of taken tremendous humor liberties with me. But that's the nature of the game. I think sometimes, and I've invited in my second post, I told people that, hey, if you want, I have almost 7 or 8 alumni of Bombay Shaving Company who left 2, 3, 4 years back. Post about in support of my character and how I am as a boss and so on. So I mean, I genuinely believe, and of course I might be biased or blind, but I genuinely invite anyone to come to our office anytime. It's a public.
All right, so there are no slaves working.
And talk to anyone you want.
No slaves working in your office. But tell us, Shantanu, in this LinkedIn post, you asked young employees to worship your work, quote. And you said work-life balance is not important in the early stages of one's career. What is your definition of work-life balance?
I think as you grow, I think it's a stage of life thing, Sarah, right? I think as you, between 22 to 28, generally, there's no fixed rule here. Typically, you're high on energy. You are likely to be either living with parents or living alone, right? Or living with like a mama, chacha, mossy type person, right? You have freedom. You were typically earning money, so are mobile. And you have maximum energy. You can party all night and run marathons in the morning. I think at that age, work-life balance is about self-improvement. And it involves, I wish I would have paid attention to my physical health and gone to a gym or learned a sport or done a lot of stuff that I'm doing now. But I think taking care of your body, learning a language, picking up a hobby are all important elements of work because they maximize energy. I genuinely feel that the most unproductive days are when I have put in a lot of hours. The most productive days are when I have been able to balance all my energies well, right? Physical energy. I derive a lot of emotional energy from music. So being able to go to a concert or listen to classical music is important, right? So I think energy, something that allows you to maximize energy, maximize happiness, always keep yourself on the edge of ability. My issue is when people don't challenge themselves. They feel that, that it's enough to do only this much. I don't want to do more. That's where the problems start, right? That I don't want to push myself anymore. And I think you only derive diamonds from coal under a certain amount of pressure. So, and that has to be self-done. It cannot be external. So that is my view. I don't think it is a number of hours put in thing at all. I think it is about self-improvement, betterment, and balancing whatever gives you energy.
But let me play devil's advocate. That's what some people are now calling quiet quitting, right? Why should people work harder than what they're paid to? is that not then exploiting employees, or can that not lead to the exploitation of employees? And is that just simply glorifying this, hustle culture concept?
Yeah, I fundamentally don't agree with working if you are only doing it for the pay. I don't run my company like that. In fact, salary is probably not the reason why most people are at Bombay Shaving Company. They're here for learning, they're here for growth, and growth of multiple kinds, right? Learning growth, you have in 4 years at Bombay Shaving Company, you typically would have a 12-year career, because you would move, 12 years of, designation growth that you would do in a company outside. You have ESOPs, of course. I think today one of our investors put up something on LinkedIn about our ESOP board. Our ESOP price is very public and in our reception. So that is what people should kind of think about when they join a workplace. It's very holistic to build mentor relationships. We have a very strong connect with all our alumni. But if you're in a job where you are dependent on the salary, for example, right, and there are obligations at home, and for some reason or the other you're not able to move out, or there is something within your life that is preventing you from or creating inertia, then I can imagine people, kind of saying, hey, I'm only going to work this much because I don't see a way out. And I don't have a real point of view on whether it's good or not, because personally, and I'll be humble enough to admit, I've never been in that position, so I don't know. But I can imagine it being suffocating. So find your way out of a situation where you're forced to quiet quit. If you are being forced to quiet quit, then there are other answers. The problem is bigger. You need to extract yourself from the situation itself.
Well, the problem is bigger. Well, talking about big problems, if you step back, look at the big picture. Many CEOs have talked about, you hear about millennials today lacking a work ethic, how it's difficult to find good workers, good employees, and how it's difficult to get them to stay. The stereotype is that millennials can't stick to a job, their feathers get ruffled easily at the workplace, etc. Have you noticed that, and why do you think that is, if so?
No, I wouldn't broad brush stroke it that way. I do think that value systems, our country is getting more and more resource surplus, right? As you get more and more resource surplus, more and more options come up. So when more and more options come up, that's how the way is going to be. People have choices, so people, will take those choices. I do feel that there is no dearth of commitment. There is no dearth of, drive. The quality of founders today, the 23-year-old founders, the young folks joining startup forces is incredible, way better than what it was in 2016. So there's no doubt that the trajectory of quality of people is definitely upward and by a good margin. I do feel that, people are, because they have options, they exercise them better than what earlier generations would. And every generation is this, right? हमारे time पे तो हम ऐसा करते थे. हमारे time पे, our parents say the same thing. I used to walk 8 kilometers to school. I never got a school bus, but we have school buses, so we will exercise that, right? So expecting the younger generation to do what we did is kind of out of whack. But I do feel that, you should not lose resource surplus opportunities because, it's a matter of luck and fortune. So you should ride that wave. There's a book, Sarah, called Teach Them How to Surf by the Patagonia founder. I don't know whether I'm getting the name right, but his basic tenet is that tell your people, teach them how to surf, which is empower them, let them be on the ocean, enjoy it. But when a wave comes, then they have to be equipped to surf it. Otherwise, they will never have the fun that they should have. And that, I think, is in my view, really, really important.
Well, so to again answer my question, are you saying then because there is a lot of options, that's why, let's say, youngsters today talk more or demand more work-life balance early on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have gone from a resource scarce economy to a resource surplus one, and we'll continue to. Options will come up, and that's a great thing.
All right. Lastly, then, do you not think that this is an important time? We need to also examine these behaviors that add up to a create hustle culture, right? That we need conversations like this, and it's important to help us all rebalance our relationships with work, because especially after a pandemic, and we've lived through this pandemic, so the time is right and ripe for this. I completely agree with you. I think the conversation is an important one to have.
and the balance is a thin one. Everything, there's nothing black or white. Everything is a shade of gray. Okay. For example, you look at the Indian Army. The Indian Army goes through a certain set of tests and a certain amount of training to push them, because what is at stake is the freedom of the country and their lives, right? So in business, especially in startups where your survival rate is less than 2%, yours, that's, it's similar in the business world, which is your survival is at stake. So I don't know about hustle culture. I don't know whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. I've heard a lot of good celebrated founders, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos in India, Narayan Murthy, etc. People who have built out not only institutions, but, kind of generational industry, right? Talk about working extra hard to make something extraordinary happen. And that is what is needed. Any excellence requires extraordinary effort. You can't be Sachin or Virat or Serena Williams or PV Sindhu if you don't do that. So we should at no point fool ourselves into believing that extraordinary outcomes will happen on their own even if we don't put in our best. That message is, I think, a big disservice to us. But I think individual choices there. People need to take care of their mental health. Bosses and founders and CEOs need to make sure that, India is a country where labor can easily be exploited. So be extra careful. I think sensitization on that is required. So on both sides of the argument, one needs to, one cannot take a stance which tends either way too strongly.
All right. So then in that context, lastly, what advice would you give to youth looking for jobs in a market where we're told unemployment rates are high, where you're also saying that options are also high?
Competitiveness will never go away. If you are, if your life is a race, and if you are running the race, you run it well. Don't run the race and then say, I'm happy to jog. If you're happy to jog, then remember it's not a race, right? You're always going to compete with other people. Life, there are only few positions at the top, and remember the trade-off you're making at all times. Because what you don't want is regretting a hypothesis 10 years later when the time has slipped out, right? So I think, and we are at one of the best times of India's journey, and we are dependent on the youth. As a founder, I absolutely am very, very dependent on talent to come in and make Bombay Shaving Company amazing. We've already had amazing people come in and do it. So I'm hoping that people kind of see the larger picture and choose for themselves and do a great job while they have the energy to do it.
Well, Shantanu Deshpande, thank you for joining us. Thank you for this candid conversations with the CEOs. Thank you for your time.